गायत्री मंत्र। ओम भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्।
Welcome again. We're back to talk some more about the planets as ideals we aspire to. And one of the things about reading a chart or understanding a chart is to understand that these planets represent qualities in us, and we do have an aspiration for them to be expressed at the best we can do with them in this lifetime. But some of us have been born with them in situations that are not their highest expression. And that can be difficult. And Marina Karika. So the planets can be significators for achievement, like we talked earlier. The sun being in charge and the moon being the carer and Mars being the warrior and Mercury being the eternal student and Jupiter being the wise one and Venus being the refined one and Saturn being the disciplined, meditative one and Rahu the innovative one. We'll put it that way rather than, he brings the change about anyway for all of us. Maybe we would prefer if things stay the same. So we're always a bit nervous when Rahu shows up because he wants to do whatever he wants to do 4 times more than. So if Rahu is sitting with your moon is because there's always something turmoil, there's always something because Rahu is creating that need to do more or to keeping things stirred, wherever he touches. Whereas where Ketu sits, he wants us to keep away from whatever he touches. Because you've done that before and he's not interested in doing that piece anymore. And so the sun in the first house does its best, shines its best. The downside of that is the ego. And, that somebody comes across as being somebody with a very high expectation of everybody around them because he's so full of his own self-importance, really. And so the sun in the first can bring, I suppose, that quality about it. The fire is lit. The sense of self is very strong, and they usually take that leadership first role. They usually be the kings or the politicians or the people that can take the limelight, because that's what the sun is. The sun is well able to shine, but where it's not able to shine is in the dark, the 12th house. So he can't be seen in the dark. And so if you're born at night time, you're not interested in taking the leadership role. It doesn't suit you. Now, maybe if you went abroad, you might do better because the 12th house, the sun is in the 12th house. So the sun is away from home. And so if you move abroad, you might do very well. But in your own place, you mightn't do so well. But there's grief attached to it if the sun is in the 12th. And the important thing is to understand that. What do you need to do to heal that, to get that? There's no point in doing astrology if you realize, my sun is in the 12th or my moon is in the 8th or whatever. You can go and tell somebody that, but that's of no benefit to somebody who wants help with living with this situation. not everybody is born. We're all got our own phobias. We've all got our own weaknesses and strengths, and to expect yourself to be perfect and come into the astrologer and only give you, oh, well, you're very good in this, and that's true. They will point out areas you're very good, but they mightn't be so quick to point out to you where you need, where you're not so good. But you know where you're not so good as well, so you don't need anybody to point out to you really. But what you do need is a remedy, and this is where the concept of what you have devotion to, and where you look for healing, and how you look for healing, But what do you want to heal? Do you want to heal your sun? Do you want to heal your moon, your Mars, your Mercury? What do you want to heal will determine. Like, you can get a gemstone to go with them. You can wear the colour. You can eat the food. You can, of any of these, they all have their own, and there's tables there in the books, and that's why there's so many books on astrology. But different cultures will have different methods, different colours, different prayers, but you can only do what comes natural to you. And yes, you can go and do the pujas in India, but are the pujas in India of any use to you if you don't understand a word of it? Or would you be better saying the prayers that your mother taught you when you were a child? When your innocence in your heart, totally abandon yourself to the angels, or "Oh, angel of God, my guardian dear" is a very common one in Ireland. And this whole concept of being protected and being safe, and the Santa Claus story, and that if you're good, you'll be looked after, and you better watch out not cry, and all that. So we've all these little fairy stories and fairy tales that teach us about warriors who myths, and who did various different things to help themselves get through a difficulty. And so your method for healing yourself is going to depend on yourself. There's so many different branches of healing that you can go down the road of. But in Vedic philosophy, they teach the gift of sight to be able to see where the problem is. And then from there, you can work out, you accept the things you can't change. If you're willing to accept it, okay, I'm very fearful wherever Saturn is sitting. I've real problems in that area. And what the interesting thing about where Saturn sits, he doesn't like to be in the first house at all, because he wants to be in the dark. He's naturally out at the outer darkness in the heavens, as the sun is the centre and wants to be the centre, wants to be number one in the centre point, where the light is on, where Saturn wants to be on the dark. So if he goes to the first house, the sadness will be expressed in your face, like the lines in the face will show up a lot earlier. You'll actually see a seriousness, or you nearly see the old man or the old woman in the child's face from the grief that they've come with, or the seriousness they've come with, because there might be old souls, or there's reasons why we've come with maybe a bit of unfinished business to deal with, and so they might go quicker, even because they're carrying a sadness, and they don't maybe have to come back again to clear up what we'd say the sun in the first might have created. So the moon in the 8th is very fearful. She doesn't want to be going down into those dark, deep places that's causing emotional turmoil. And so the moon in the 8th will have emotional turmoil. Mars in the 7th, Mars, the biggest problem with Mars is nothing happens quick enough for him. And so he's he's off of a shot, and he can have accidents, and he can run into things and break things and cause fires, and when he's not getting to do what he wants to do. And so in the 7th, he creates the most difficulty. And same with Mercury. With Mercury for a different reason, because Mercury wants to have fun, whereas in the 7th, what you need is commitment. You need a commitment to Saturn, the seriousness of the Saturn in the 7th, to be able to do a relationship and to be able to compromise and to hold your to behave well and not be so wanting everything done your way if it's Mars, and not be out playing all the time if it's Mercury. Like, Mercury needs to grow up, take responsibility, and Mars needs to expect other people's wishes as well. So Mars in the 7th, Jupiter in the 3rd. In the 3rd, Jupiter's natural way of being is in the 9th, but in the 3rd it's doing its own thing. So Jupiter's not willing to listen, or when it's in the 3rd, nobody wants to hear him, because he's in the 3rd. It doesn't suit him there, because nobody wants to hear what he has to say, because they're all doing their own thing. Whereas what Jupiter wants is students, because Jupiter has all the wisdom and all the ancient knowledge, but he has no students if he's in the 3rd, and he has to put up with all this foolishness around him when he knows that it's only temporary. He knows there's a higher dimension, so because he has the knowledge, so he doesn't do well in the 3rd. And Venus likewise in the 6th. Venus in the 6th. In the 6th, 7th is the 12th from the 6th is the 6th is the 12th from the 7th, and the 7th is the house of relationship, and the 12th is the house of loss. And so the relationship is lost through possibly one's attitude towards sex, or some aspect of the relationship that's not reaching fulfillment through some problem that needs to be in a pending karma. As I said, 6th is the house of pending karma that one needs to look at in the life. So the issues to do with Venus in the 6th will cause serious problems with relationship, and like everybody has Venus in the 6th from something. That's the other thing, that we need to look at these from not just from the 1st house, from ourselves, but from all the other houses as well. And I want to say that because we usually take it as just being from the 1st, but you can look at it 6th from any house, or like Sun in the 12th from any house is going to be uncomfortable and not be able to shine. Or the Saturn in the 1st house, we'd say I have Saturn in the 4th house. The 4th house is the house of home. Saturn creates likes things that are old, so I like old houses. And what's going to be in old houses? Cracks and repairs, and there'll be a grief associated with having old houses, because the problems will be there to fix always. And so, but if that's your preference, you've got to live with that preference, but recognize it and accept it. And that's the thing of Saturn. And then the Rahu in the 9th. Well, Rahu is new. It has no faith in the all that the 9th is about. It is any place you see Rahu, there's going to be a change of faith. If Rahu is in the 9th, you're going to lose faith, and that can be a real challenge. And so I just want to finish up with a prayer that I've been taught by the great Sanjay Rath about healing our our area with a very famous mantra on this particular areas. So in the back of each they talk about there being three problems primarily, and that's the greed associated with Rahu, fear associated with Saturn, and anger associated with Mars. Now, the remedy to the greed is generosity, represented by the Jupiter. And the fear associated with Saturn is through lack of knowledge. It's just through ignorance or ignoring something that we need to look at because we're fearful. So bring in the light, bring in the knowledge, take us out of the darkness. The sun will do that. It takes in the light. And the anger is associated with the frustration of the fears and not being able to get what we want. And so we get these are the most difficult planets. And they talk about in the three gunas, the Rajas, Tamas and Sattva. And these are tamas. These are the energies that cause us to behave in a difficult way and to bring us to our lower natures. And it's the Rajas of the middle way, the Mercury and Venus of wanting the nice things that cause us to drop into these territories because we didn't have enough play, didn't have enough fun, didn't have the nice things in life that we wanted. And so we drop into these negative way of dealing with the situation. Fight for it. Mars will get fearful. Is when Mars kicks off fighting, the fear comes in even more so. And maybe there's something you needed to know. And then the greediness, the lust to want it anyway, creates really problems for us. And so the remedy to the Rahu, as I said, is generosity. The remedy to Saturn is knowledge. What do you need to know more about or learn about? And compassion is the remedy to the Mars, And these are qualities that we need to strengthen in ourselves. And Jupiter, the grace, the gift of grace, comes from the sun. The Jupiter is the sun, remedies Rahu, because Jupiter is generous. Knowledge, the light of knowledge, it comes from the sun, and the moon is the compassion. And the avatars associated with and avatars are again, as I said, they're like deities. And like we said, deity is Geogwich, D-E, in the language. But the deity, the mantra here associated with three deities or devas, either is another name, that came to rescue the world at different times in the Indian philosophy. For the Jupiter is Hari, for the sun is Rama, and for the moon is Krishna. And so when you listen to the song of My Sweet Lord, who was it? George Harrison from the Beatles. He sings that song, My Sweet Lord. And I would ask myself the question, because when we talk astrology, we talk about the Lord of the house. We talk the planet as the Lord, And when he's saying, My Sweet Lord, which Lord is he talking about? When he sings that. And because he was very involved. And he sang, if you listen to the song, My Sweet Lord, this mantra is being recited in the background. Hari Rama Krishna is being recited, chanted all the time in the background to My Sweet Lord. And so that's what we want to do, is to get to that place of being able to work with my sweet Lord in whatever area, that he is inspired, to work in and to work with our challenges. So doing something like the Hari Ramakrishna as a constant, and as I said, this is, well, most things I know is my understanding that I've taken from Sanjay Rath, who's a powerful inspiration to my learning and my knowledge. And yeah, it's 20 years ago, coming up in August, since he was in Ireland. I'm glad to say he touched down here for a weekend. It was an incredible experience, but he brought many lessons with him, and it would take a lifetime and 2 and 3 maybe for me to catch up with, even close to what he knows. He has a whole book written on Vedic remedies in astrology, on gemstones and prayers and different sounds to create, but they're a bit far over the road for me, coming from the west of Ireland as I do, and still very much attached to my own tradition, and yeah. So I bow to the superior knowledge and know that I can benefit. But this is something that I do recite quite regularly, and particularly going to bed at night, because if you recite going to bed at night, that's your 12th house where you're going to sleep and going to rest. If you recite your chant, whatever it be, at night time going to bed, the day you pass over, you're so used to reciting it every night while you're living, that when you do make the passover from this to the next outfit, the next suit of clothing, or back into spirit, that's where you'll go. You'll go into your mantra, you'll go into your chant, whatever you're used to going to, whatever's been the safety net for you in life, you can continue with that going forward. So it's a good practice to have a spiritual climb down, or rather than the internet, but sometimes we can't help it. So I'll leave it there for now. There's always more to learn, and as I said, the more questions the better. And if you want to learn, get in touch. The information is there on the website. pearlfinn.ie will get me. And yeah, thank you very much.